On average, how many fences are y'all installing a week nowadays?
We are installing from 10 to 15 fences every week.
Oh, wow. Across residential and commercial?
Yes, correct.
And did you start with both service lines, or did you add on one later on?
So we started with residential for sure. And then we kept adding more services. Now that also comes in with, the reputation you build and people looking for you or being able to find you. So we kept getting, more emails or more requests to do commercial projects. So that's
Sure.
when we need to commercial more seriously. But we started with residential.
Okay. Paul here has a really interesting background. He was born in Colombia, grew up in Miami, served in the Marines, worked in Blackrock. Now he's the owner operator of Hawk Fences, and they do really great work in the Atlanta area, serving both residential and commercial clients. So thanks so much for joining me, Paul.
Thank you so much, Will, for the invitation. I know it's been a while, but very, very fortunate to be here. And then these kind of topics are, what I'm very interested in. So thanks for the invite.
Yeah, of course. So maybe if we could rewind the clock a little bit before you became the owner of Hawk Fences and started it from the ground up, and take me through a little bit of your journey to small business ownership.
I spent most of my life in Miami. High school kid, just like to play sports, go out. But then when I graduated, I didn't have, many opportunities perhaps, or didn't know much about going to college and just needed kind of like a solution. And then I just decided to join the Marines. Why the Marines? Easy answer. I just type on Google, what's the hardest, military branch to join? And then the Marines always came on top. So called the recruiter. Yeah, did the test, passed, did all the physical testing that they do. And then I just headed straight to boot camp. And then that's literally when my life just changed. The guy that I became when I was in the Marines or when I left compared to the guy that joined, it's two completely, different people at, mainly on the professional side, I'll say, mainly on the discipline, finding the mission, accomplishing the mission. So I learned a lot of things in the Marines that kind of like built me, to the man I am right now, which I do have a daughter, I have a wife, and we live pretty good here in Atlanta, Georgia. I did take some college classes in the Marines. So when I left after 4 years, I already had some college credits. So then I
Sure.
transferred to Georgia State here in Atlanta, Georgia, went for a finance degree, graduated, and then I joined Blackrock, which is a huge, asset management company.
Sure.
Um, Met people that are extremely smart. But at one point I thought it wasn't my thing. It wasn't what I was looking for.
And had your parents owned small businesses when you were growing up?
Yes, my mom, she owned a small bakery.
Okay.
So when I was growing up, I always saw her. She used to work at a bank as well. So she has
Okay.
that finance background, but she didn't go to college or nothing like that. So it was mainly as a teller, perhaps. And then she opened her own small bakery. And then I grew up around that. I grew up around food and then, talking to clients, suppliers, all those headaches. They were kind of like always in the back of my mind. But I never thought about opening a fence installation business. I mean, never.
And so, what was the journey from BlackRock to Hawk Fences?
It was a friend that he was installing fences. And then I just got pretty close to him. And then over the weekend, especially on Saturday, so here in Georgia, whenever it gets busy, it gets really busy for the service companies. So you're not only working, 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, you're working sometimes Saturdays and sometimes you're working Sundays as well. Not from an admin or sales point of view, but also the installers are out there pretty much every day. So I started going, to help him out. I think it was a good workout as well. And then we just established a pretty good relationship. And I stopped working with him because work got so busy. that he just went on his own. But then a few months later, he gave me a call, and then I was like, "Hey man, look, this is what I have for you. Let's go half and half." And then money wise, like we'll invest X amount of money, and then you do it, and then we'll just get started.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Now,
So like
now
fun.
you
Yeah.
mentioned you're doing 10 to 15 fences a week. At the time that you quit your job and joined up together, how many were you doing a week?
So this is another thing that I usually post on Twitter. Um, just going the subcontractor route. So our own job, we're doing like one or two installs per week, and then sometimes we'll go a week with four, but then the following week it'll be one and zero. So we were doing door hangers, I was doing door knocking for hours, and then just trying to build up our reputation. And eventually that paid off, but months after, or like weeks after that, we didn't have a sales process, we didn't have a follow-up system, nothing like that. So the results that I was looking for, they came in, but later.
Sure.
So in the meantime, a company out of state, I don't know how they found us, but they gave us a call. We met here in Georgia. We went over everything. And they were like, "Hey man, look, we're a fence company as well. And we need installers. But we just do not need an installer, perhaps. We need, someone that is responsible for all the installations we're going to give them." So yeah, man. Yeah, what are the prices? What are the timelines? How many installations per week? And then they started giving us like two or three per week. So then at that point, I was like, well, I only have to sell three for the week to week full to keep the
Sure.
installers on. If you don't give enough jobs to installers, they are going to leave you, guaranteed. I mean,
Yeah.
that works. So we started subcontracting, and that's how we kept building our reputation. We kept, earning more money. And then with the funds that we were getting from subcontracting, we built our website, we built, our social media, some posts, and then some Google reviews. And at the moment, I want to say maybe the highest rated company here in Atlanta, not by a review count, but by rating, a 5.0
Yeah.
rating with over 105 reviews. So
That's awesome. So your advice to folks thinking about starting would be go direct to consumers so you can start to build the relationship, but you really need to find the subcontracting route to keep you busy early on.
yes, so I'll definitely advise anyone that's starting out, don't um scratch either or. Like, hey, for sure, the end goal is for you to, I mean, it's different for everyone, but it's to create your own brand. However, building a brand takes time, not only because that's just the nature of it, but also because we're going to make mistakes. And some of those mistakes take time to recover. So if you can make mistakes while earning money, even though, let's say, instead of making $1,000, you're making 700 or 600, it's easier to fix things when money's coming in. Um, so it's just a matter of sitting down with whoever the GC or the contractor is, making sure everything is pretty lined out correctly. And even then, you can make some mistakes with the negotiations with the GC, because at that point, they're going to have more experience. But as long as the payment terms are clear and the scope of work is clear, I think those funds should be allocated to invest in the brand, and then, keep, building from there.
Okay. And is that typically the margin or the take from the GC is around 30 to 40%?
I wouldn't to say yes, because sometimes we have subcontracted as well. So let's say if you're making 1,000 profit on a project, and then for some reason you cannot do it or something, and you have to subcontract. I mean, you want to pay the subs good as well. So I
Sure.
think 40%, 25%, or within 20 to 40, maybe 50 is already cutting it. And it's already too much. But yeah, you want to be in that frame.
And for your average install job, is this a new homeowner moving in or is it replacing a fence and you've lived there for a while? What is a common reason for residential?
So for residential, the number one reason people get a fence is because of their dogs. it's getting to the point that maybe 75% of our clients are pet owners. And then fence replacements is something pretty common as well. Georgia is a pretty old state. So whenever you see a wood fence, a wood fence could last 15 to 20 years. So 15, 18 is kind of similar to roofing, where the roof needs to be replaced.
And when y'all were picking the routes early on of where to go, door knocking, what neighborhoods to focus on, what makes for a great neighborhood?
So it's been 3 years. Now, the way I'm seeing it is that what makes a good neighborhood, it's when you actually can see it's an established community, or if it's a new community, that it looks like a community. So you see kind of like kids playing outside. You see people, going around with their dogs. So I know there's a lot of metrics you can look on Google, like average home price and all that. But whenever you break into a new community, let's say it's a new build, but whenever you go out there, you see people hanging out, you see neighbors talking to each other. That's the sweet spot that you're looking for, because that's when word of mouth travels faster.
Sure.
If I do a fence for you and you're part of a community, most likely you're going to recommend this to your neighbor.
Sure.
Somewhere has to make the jump. So we have a subdivision about 45 minutes away from us, brand new. And then we were the ones that installed the first fence in that subdivision. And then
Yep.
since then, we have made well over 6 figures in the past year just by recommendations with zero
Wow.
ads.
That's impressive. And what's the average price per job on the residential side?
On the residential side, we're looking around $6,000, $8,000
Okay.
on
Got it.
installs. So we also do repairs that are on the lower end, but for a brand new install, we're looking at $6,000, $8,000.
Okay. So even in the first couple of months of y'all working together, you're pulling in, 5 figures a month from the installs. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's very fair.
That's awesome. And over the course of the first year, do you remember ballpark how much revenue you pulled in?
In the first year, we did a little over 400K.
Man, that's
First year.
no joke for a first year. How quickly did you start bringing on more teammates to the company?
So I think that's one of my mistakes, or one of the lessons. It took me a little longer to kind of learn or realize, is that I delayed by a few months or maybe a year to bring in new people until recently. So at first I was like, I can take on, all the estimates, all the selling, all the accounting, all the financing, all the marketing. What I need is to establish a solid group of installers. And that's one of our competitive advantages, that we have multiple supply installers that are ready to go. So we're never 2 months out. We are
Sure.
never 1 month out. That also means that we can sell more, right? So it's kind of like goes hand in hand. But we established a very solid group of installers. We train them. They know what we're looking for. They know our standards. And then just, I don't know, I guess a year and a half, we brought in our first, we hire a VA, virtual assistant, to handle the volume of calls, requests, and things like that. So she joined the company, she joined the team. So she'll take all these calls, because I was missing a bunch of calls too. So I was going out there doing an estimate to get to the client, and then I'll get a call. And I don't know if it's true, but it says, some people say that if you miss so many calls from Google, like your reputation, I guess Google sees it as
Oh, interesting.
that. So I was like, damn, I cannot miss too many calls anymore. So that's when I hire a VA, and she's awesome. So
That's really
we
cool.
all, yeah, and now we also hired a project manager a few months ago. It's been awesome as well. Amazing reviews on Google that he has gotten from the projects he has managed. And actually today I was a little late to this call because we're doing an interview with our next sales guy. So
Okay.
the team is growing. So it's also, a blessing to have these kind of opportunities and to work with these kind of people for sure.
I'm sure. And on the installer side, are those 1099 contractors?
We mainly have 1099s for the installers. Yeah.
Okay. And how do you source them?
Through relationships, honestly, through recommendations. We don't do anything online. We don't go to Indeed. It's just like, hey, man, I know someone that is looking for a job. I know someone that is looking for a new opportunity. Can we try him in? Hey, man, I have. And then this is the other thing with fence installers, and I'm pretty sure it applies to other industries within the home service space. Sometimes it gets very tough to hire people because the pool it's limited. So some guys have been with companies for 10 plus years, and it's pretty hard, for them to move or leave those companies. But you need to find, or at least what has worked for me is that, or for us, is that we're looking for similar industries as well. So let's say we do a lot of wooden fences. So something that is very similar and requires the same tools, it's framing. It's easier to train someone that it's a framer to be a fence installer, or at least not the installer, but the second guy in the team, because they already know the tools. They know their wall guns, they know the saws, they know the whole thing. So it's pretty quick, to get them up to speed because they're already familiar. So with that, so that's something we have done as well. Just tapping into people from different industries that might be looking for a different opportunity. Framing is pretty dangerous as well. You got to be up there until fence installations is safe or safe.
Yep. And in terms of the average job, you mentioned estimates earlier. So let's say like a customer gives y'all a call, your VA answers it. What happens next?
So we can do a satellite estimate within 24 hours to the
Oh,
homeowner.
wow.
I love the system that we build around that. So if you give us the quick description, if you pick the fence that you're looking for, we actually have kind of like on our website, we have like an app that we build that the homeowner chooses the material. And then the next page is just an examples of those, of those fences, different styles. Then they choose the height, then the amount of linear feet, and then they submit all the info with their address, phone number, and all that. And then once we receive it, it's pretty easy to do the estimate via satellite.
And so let's say you go out there and you do an on-site estimate and then you provide them that. Is there a down payment before y'all start the install?
Yes, we do have a required down payment for every single client, except for repairs, which is
Okay,
lower ticket items. But for every
sure.
fence installation, we do require a deposit.
Does the deposit cover the cost of purchasing the raw materials, or do you still have to float some of that yourself?
So usually it covers the cost of the materials, but I don't think we're. I mean, it has probably happened once where the homeowner is like, "Hey, let's cancel the project," and then we'll have to pick up the material because we usually deliver those materials as well. But even whenever we don't deliver and then we pick it up from a supplier, I mean, we get billed once we pick up the material. So let's say your installation is tomorrow and then you want to cancel today, that let's say the $2,000 that you paid, we'll just send it back to you. I mean, there's no, I mean, we don't go around trying to be like, hey, you have to pay X amount of dollars now that you cancel. I mean, some people do go through some struggles. Maybe they needed the money for something else. So we don't really go after people that ask for the deposit back, even though that has rarely happened.
Sure,
It's not much of a thing that, hey, this is going to cover the materials. So if anything happens, I already have the materials covered.
sure.
Well, in theory, that's what it should do. Which is more on the side of, hey, he wants to do business with us. I'm going to give them our full attention. We're going to pull permits. We're going to get the scope of work. We're going to block that day, which in my opinion is more important than the materials. It's losing a day of work. We're going to do everything for this guy. So we are serious. The homeowner is serious as well. So let's get it started.
Got it. That makes sense. So let's say they accept the estimate. Are you pulling permits next or ordering the materials from the supplier? What comes after that?
So if a permit is required, so it varies by city. Some cities might require a permit, some others they don't. What you always need is an 811 permit. Then it's, I don't know how it's where
Is
you
that
are,
the
but
dig alert?
correct. Yeah, that's call before you dig. So just to make sure there's not underground utilities, hid, internet cables, power lines, all that. So that's one thing that has to happen before every single installation. And we have lost projects for that reason. The client calls today, they're like, hey, I'm ready to go, but I need this installed tomorrow. Or that usually takes 5 business days. Unfortunately, that's something we do not do. And I've had people tell me like, hey man, just take the money or just take on the job and then just be very careful. I'm more on the side of um let's kind of like respect our trade as well. Let's respect the fence industry. Let's set a good reputation. Let's do professional work. And then sometimes professional work takes time. Most homeowners understand that has to happen. But I have lost some jobs for that. So if the city needs a permit or needs to issue a permit, we can pull those for the homeowner as well. We have our license, our insurance, all that. If they need an HOA permit, the homeowner takes care of that. And then after that, we just literally, order the materials. Sometimes we have them delivered. Sometimes we just grab them from our warehouse. And then the installations usually take one day.
Okay. So you could normally get it done pretty quickly thereafter. Like after that 5-day dig alert window, you're able to break ground pretty quickly.
Yes, usually within 2 weeks. Well, we're already
Okay.
installed.
And is that the reason that you built the warehouse to be able to move quicker on some of these jobs?
Yes, that's one. Two is that in the long run, you will save more money by spending money on rent because now you have materials, leftover materials that are going to be enough for smaller projects. So at that point, you can store your materials here now. You don't want them sitting here for too long because at that point, it's just literally money that's parked here. But we'll build a welding station, like a small welding shop, perhaps.
Oh,
So
that's cool.
yeah, so any small gates and smaller projects that require welding, we do have a weld shop over here that we don't have to pay someone else, hundreds of dollars to do something simple because we already have the materials too. So we have the materials, we have a welding station, we have a dumpster, so we don't have to make multiple trips to the landfill, which it kills, hours every day. And then we have this office with 2 desks, a bathroom. So, like I mentioned, I have a baby, so sometimes it's just easier for me to come here, literally
Sure.
just log into work and then do what I'm supposed to with no interruptions.
Yeah. It'll be a little bit of time before she's helping out in the business.
Yeah, yeah. Hopefully that's the goal. I already have branded small shirts and small
Oh,
hats.
that's awesome.
Yes,
That's so
she's
cool.
right.
And in terms of y'all's growth plan, is it to kind of stay within fencing and expand territories or potentially add on other home services verticals?
I think we're slowly getting into the point that we need to make a decision like, hey, are we going to open a second location or are we going to add something related to fencing? Let's say not pools or concrete work, but what about decks? Decks, it's pretty similar to what we do. But I don't think we're going to go that route. I think we could expand to a second location for the same reason that I explained earlier. I do have, a lot of respect for the fencing industry, and I want to provide good value. And then when some homeowners will ask you once you're on site, like, hey, do you do this? Do you do that? Or do you only do fencing every single time? I only say, hey, I just do fencing only. This is what we're good at. This is what we really know. So we're just sticking to it. So if the opportunity comes for us to open a second location that I already have some cities in mind in the future, we'll do that. But before getting to that point, we have a very long way to go. There's still too many things we need to learn, too many people we have to onboard. So we're not there yet. There's just still a lot of potential with this location.
That makes sense. As you think about folks who may be wanting to buy a fencing company? If you were to kind of like, pull back the curtain, what would you say are the important metrics or things to look at that separate the best fencing companies from the average ones?
There is a lot of moving pieces, and I like to tell my team that fencing is something that is not supposed to be complicated in terms of the installations, but knowing how to run the business is a little more challenging. And then you'll see a lot of fence companies, going down, in a few years. One of the things that I'll definitely mention to anyone that it's buying a company to an existing company or starting their own company from scratch is that to focus on the brand. So they want to have a brand that people know or that they're familiar with. Focus on the Google reviews and having a nice website. If it's already existing, making sure everything is up to date. And then after that, it comes down to who's doing their operations. So as long as you have the incoming leads, you can do SEO, you can do Facebook ads, whatever. Then you need to focus on the installation part. How good is your project manager? The project manager is a very important piece of the whole puzzle. It's what is going to keep everything together, the homeowner, the installer, and the company. So how valuable is your project manager or the guy that's there right now? What's his network? Like, does he know a good amount of people that could jump in if needed? That's another big one. I've seen companies with lots of potential, but then they have trouble finding, installers, and the next available date is in 2 months from today or 4 months from today. If you're in a metro area and those are the times that you're dealing with, it's going to be a little challenging for you to keep up because these are companies, there's a company here in our area that has 20 teams every single day. So 20 teams, that's insane. That's 100 installations per week. And these guys are pretty good at hiring people too. And then hiring people, your project manager can make it easier, make that process easier whenever he knows the crews. He's pretty close to the installers. The installers are a very important part of the puzzle as well. Those are the guys that are going to give you a good reputation on the first day. If you're going back to an installation, that's not something good. You want to install, close the project, get paid, and then focus on the next one.
Sure. Aside from the app that y'all built and then the satellite imagery, what other software do you use to run the business day to day?
So we have a CRM. It's a roofing CRM, but a lot of fence companies use it. Pretty helpful. It's a job and Nimbus. I don't think it's that well known, but I think they have a pretty good software. Honestly, before then, I was just using Square to receive payments, kind of send estimates. I know Java is out there. I know there's a good amount of options.
Sure.
However, I think that the earlier you go into a CRM, or at least you test it out, the better it's going to be for you in the long run. So I used to be a data analyst, so at least you can go back and study this data and see what's going on. It gets pretty
Sure.
tough to make decisions with no data. So this is what the CRM is going to give you. So it's a very critical tool. And the way we talk about it here with the team is that this is as helpful as, let's say, a saw or like a bobcat or like a nail gun. It literally it needs to exist, or it needs to be present. So we have a CRM. Our office manager, she has access to it. Our installers, our project manager. So it keeps communication easier. And then that's that. We have our website, of course, our own email with our own domain, our CRM. Um, at one point, we're even using Discord to talk with the team, which I thought like I think a lot of people are going to say, well, Discord doesn't work or it's lag or move to whatever, but it gets the job done if then we started from scratch. Now we also have the Zoom, the business account, and then we use it to make phone calls. We use it for video calls. So sometimes, and then this happened this week, so it's last week, so it's fresh. But sometimes, whenever you have kind of like a client that you have some kind of doubts that maybe it's not going to go the right way, but you still want to take the risk, just because maybe you just need the project, it's always good to jump in a video call, a recorded video call with AI transcript, and go over every single line item and set the
Sure.
expectation straight. So we also use Zoom for that. And I like the business plan because you can record and then you can get the AI transcript, you can get it the whole thing. So it makes it more easier. And then you can send a copy to the homeowner so everyone is covered.
Sure. And everyone's on the same page. Now that you're 3 years in, looking back, what are the biggest surprises?
Relationships is one. You know, the way you build relationships, it's pretty much how it can dictate um the direction of the company and how fast you can grow the company. There's a ton of good people out there as well. Whenever you kind of like start in the service business or more in the construction business, you hear a lot of bad stuff. Like this GC didn't pay me, this subcontractor didn't show up. You hear a lot of bad things that might scare some people away from starting these kind of businesses. But I'm pretty impressed with the amount of good people that they're still, out there and literally just want to work. So, so that's one thing that really caught my attention. I was in the Marines, like I mentioned before, so I'm pretty familiar with bonding with people from different places, in the country. So that's one thing that I think this industry or in the service business, it's packed with good people that just want to do good work. I wasn't expecting that when I first came into to this. I was like, man, I'm afraid I'm not going to trust this guy because I don't know, he sounds kind of iffy. But at the end, I think everything works out.
Sure.
At the end, if someone doesn't pay you, I mean, you don't pay taxes on it at least. But possible. So you take it as a lesson. But that's one thing that really impressed me, and that I'm just a fan of what I do. I just really enjoy, what I do. I try to, post content on Twitter about it because I really enjoy it. And then coming from the background that I'm coming from finance, from the Marines, I didn't expect this to be like this. Honestly, I thought it was going to be more kind of like, let's hustle, let's put in X amount of hours every single day. But then it gets to a point that you also have to enjoy it. And that's one
Sure.
more competitive advantage over your competitors, right? If you enjoy what you do, it's kind of tough to get beat every single time. So that's another
Yeah.
thing that surprised me.
Yeah. That's good advice. Awesome, Paul. Well, thanks so much for coming on. It's been a blast hearing about your journey at Hawk Fences. If people want to find you on the internet, where should they look?
So I'm mainly on X on Twitter. I have a public account. My username is just Paul Paul 0, and my last name, which is Montenegro. That's where I post my content, regarding small businesses, regarding the home service industry as well. And on Instagram is just Hawk Fences. That's our company. There's a lot of videos where I'm explaining our processes. I have a ton just kind of like selfie videos, interviews with homeowners, or just before and after the installation.
Yeah.
So Hawk Fences on Instagram.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining me. This was a blast. I really appreciate it.